Buddy, this is Gary Van Antwerp from Training Magazine Network. I want to welcome you to a very special event today that we have in the Training Mag Network webinar series, Surviving the New Skills Economy. And Cornerstone OnDemand has done a wonderful job of sharing with us their research and bringing to us an excellent speaker, Brett Wilson. I know you're going to enjoy him. He is the Director of Thought Leadership and Strategy at Cornerstone OnDemand. I'll be turning things over to him in just a moment. I do want to fill you in on a couple of things before we do that. If you're a user of the Insights widget and you're here in the live session, then you can go ahead and click on the slide. And if you are a user of the recording, if you're watching the recording of this session right now, you too can go ahead and click on the slide in Adobe Connect. It works, and that'll launch the widget for the Insights widget to allow you to capture your notes and your takeaways and document them, and then at the end of that process, print a certificate proving your participation, so you can use that to apply for SHRM or HRCI credits. If you need some help with that, especially if you're watching the recording, you can go to the Contact Us tab at trainingmagnetwork.com, and Keith will help you. Or if you're here in the live session, you can stay afterward, and I will be happy to help you with it as well, okay? We have a number of great webinars coming up tomorrow. Jennifer Hoffman and I will be doing this webinar, Creating Better Blended Learning Faster with Perpetual Learning Design. And then Alan Partridge, Dr. Alan Partridge, I should say, will be back with us on the 18th to talk about organizational learning as a resource for change management. And then Ray Jimenez will be doing the keynote session in this Master Series webinar I was talking about earlier, the one that is an all-day event. So join us for those. You can go to trainingmagnetwork.com and click on the slide, on the button on the right-hand side to find the calendar of all the webinars, all the TechLearn webinars, as well as the traditional ones there. You can click on the middle button to find the recordings. It's actually over 800 now, recordings of all of our past webinars. And the recording of this webinar will appear there tomorrow. It'll be the very top one on the page after you click the button. And then finally, don't miss out on the opportunity to explore the white papers and other resources that are available by clicking this button here, this third button down, all right? And we really want to thank Cornerstone for doing this webinar today and making it possible. We all need to stop managing our human capital and start managing our human potential. Cornerstone does this by design and has been successful in transforming organizations into powerful cultures of continuous improvement for over 18 years. Visit www.cornerstoneondemand.com to learn more about how they can help you. So as we go today, please go ahead and enter your questions in the chat, and I am very pleased to get things started by welcoming to Training Magazine Network, Brett Wilson. And again, the session is Surviving the New Skills Economy, sponsored by Cornerstone OnDemand. Brett, welcome to Training Magazine Network.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for having me, and thank everybody for joining today. Pardon me. In my role at Cornerstone, and my colleagues and I are relied upon to do research on what's happening in the world of HR. And with that research, we draw conclusions. Part of that is from our own personal professional experience. And it helps our customers, and also we can make recommendations on where our product is headed. And much of that is informed by what our clients tell us. It's an investment that Cornerstone has made. There are over 20 of us doing exactly this kind of research and giving webinars and speeches. And each of us has around 15 to 20 years HR practitioners, some of us over 30 years of doing this. And the subject of the new skills economy has occupied a significant portion of our recent work because it's not only the research pointing us in this direction, our customers are also informing us about it as well. So I'm using the term surviving because, and I'll explain this, the need for new skills will grow at I think, a dizzying speed in the next few years, and we want to be positioned to meet that need. As Wayne Gretzky, the hockey player, once famously said, "I want to skate to where the puck will be, not to where the puck is right now." So one of our principal conclusions is the world has changed, and the next industrial revolution has arrived. Now, according to the World Economic Forum, We've entered what's called the fourth industrial revolution, in which technology has embedded into societies in ways that involve, actually require entirely new capabilities for people and machines. Now, we'll recall from history, the first industrial revolution is widely taken as that shift from a reliance on animals and human effort as the primary sources of energy to the use of fossil fuels and mechanical power and what that enabled. The second revolution occurred between the end of the 19th century, the first couple of decades of the 20th century, and brought major breakthroughs in the form of electricity distribution, communications, new forms of power generation. The third, and one that we're all mostly familiar with, is began in the 1950s with the development of digital systems and communications. And the 1950s saw rapid advances in computer power, which enabled us to have new ways to generate, process, share information. But that brings us to the fourth industrial revolution, which is best described as cyber physical systems, involving entirely new capabilities for people and machines. And while these capabilities are reliant on the technology and infrastructure built during the third revolution, the fourth revolution represents new ways in which technology becomes really embedded within societies. Now, some of you may argue that this would have been inevitable, but technology has destroyed the staying power of traditional companies, reducing their average lifespan by 2/3 since 1950. And moving the majority of their assets from tangible assets like buildings, desks, chairs, machines, stuff like that, to intangible assets. Let's put a statistic around that. According to the Human Capital Institute, in 1982, the value of a publicly traded company was made up of 62% tangible, the desks, chairs, and stuff, and 38% intangible. In 2015, the value of a publicly traded company was made up of only 35% tangible assets and 65% tangible assets. This means two things: intellectual property and people. So as a result, the average age of an S&P 500 company is under 20 years old, down from 60 years old in the 50s. According to Credit Suisse, that's going to continue to shrink to only 14 years by 2026. So what does all this mean? It's predicted that half of the S&P 500 will be replaced over the next 10 years. Now, there are several factors that contribute to this. Certainly, corporate buyouts, M&As, they had a hand in shortening the lifespan, but it's the increased pace of technology that I think is the primary cause of the disruption. I don't know whether you all have seen it, but there's a super TED Talk by a gent by the name of Sir Ken Robinson. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you do. In fact, it's the highest seen TED Talk ever. And now what Sir Ken maintains is that our approach to education is still trapped in late 18th century thinking or 19th century thinking. Send our kids to school so they'll one day replace the older workforce in the factories. And it was still the focus on basic threes: reading, writing, arithmetic. But today, there's an increasing awareness that there needs to be a more demand-driven approach to educational attainment. Put more simply, there needs to be a focus on developing skills that are needed by employers in the workplace today. Now, while this is a straightforward concept, it's not how our education or employer organizations necessarily are currently designed to operate. And that's nobody's fault. That's just how things have evolved. In short, this means that in this new digital age, the fourth generation, if you will, skills have become the currency. Data is the oil that fuels our transactions. Now, what we are seeing is a global skills crisis. According to PwC's 18th annual survey of CEOs, CEOs see change coming, and they are seeing a much broader range of skills. Great products and solutions come when there's a synthesis of a lot of different kinds of perspectives and ideas. But they're also worried about whether their people will be ready or not. Now, the survey also tells us that skills are at the top of CEOs' talent agenda. over 80% say their organizations are now looking for a much broader range of skills than in the past. And that's not surprising since CEOs, they're looking to grow their head count. They recognize that finding talent with new skills is going to be really tricky, especially when almost a third of millennials lack work-related computer skills, which I found a surprising statistic. And it's not just CEOs. Recently, in a Wall Street Journal survey, when they asked of chief financial officers today, the number one concern this quarter is hiring and retaining employees. And that's from chief financial officers, and the journal went on to say we've been doing surveys 21 years, 85 quarters now. That's the first time that's been the number one concern of a CFO. So, from our point of view, this means that we've got to recognize that we need to reinvent how we manage talent and how to develop those new skills for the talent. And what's happening is this rapid change gives rise to business model disruption. Learning and development doesn't control that, but learning and development has to move at that speed. That includes everybody in HR, which disrupts the traditional view of upskilling within job families or occupational roles. I think we have to look at it differently now. Deeper expertise is going to be the new requirement, and the ability for people to autonomously self-curate learning content at the speed of work and the flow of work. And the ability for organizations to enable that is, in my judgment, the next important move for organizations. So here's why I think that way. We see just about every industry is being disrupted by technology, which means almost every job is changing. And that's what's causing the real global skills crisis. That same PwC research I told you about tells us that concerns about the availability of skills are an 8-year high, and certainly at the top of the CEO's talent agendas, like I told you, 81%. Now, we all see this. Look at how we consume media. Those of you old enough, I certainly remember we used to get in the car and go to Blockbuster Video, rent a VHS tape, and that, they're out of business, and that kind of moved to Redbox at the convenience stores, and now, we've moved on to really streaming media using things like Netflix. And even where we commute, we went from taxis to Ubers, and now we're seeing driverless cars being tested, but probably a part of the future. And manufacturing, 3D printing, I can't even imagine what that'll do for manufacturing. Change is dramatic. Automation is the number one disruptive force. Now, disruption's not new, but it's the speed, the complexity, and today's global span that makes today's talent dilemma very hard, I think. So not surprising, jobs have already started changing, and the skills are new and unique, and in many cases in very short supply. And according to the latest research, soon we'll only be as good as the skills we possess. I'll explain a little of that as I go along, but which skills are they? And how can we make sure that we keep pace? You might ask, these job titles that you see on the screen, are these the jobs of tomorrow? No, they're not. They exist today. Amazon needs this culinary product developer, because they're growing their grocery home delivery ambitions. Tesla and Uber, they're using what they call an automotive occupant packing engineer. Now, they're the ones who create and conduct ergonomic studies, how you get into the car, how you get out, comfort, rider experience, etc. Smartphone companies need this camera algorithm engineer as that allows them to be a key differentiator from their competition. So the world of work is changing, and some jobs are changing faster than others. So let me know what you think. Here's a polling question for you. How worried are you about technology being a disruptive force within your organization over the next 5 years? The first option is I'm worried about it. I'm somewhat worried about it. I'm worried, but I think we're ready for it. Not worried at all. Tell me what you think. So, Gary, you think we're just about there with all the answers?
I'd say let's give them 5 more seconds.
Okay. I think every company is certainly thinking about it. Some companies are better positioned than others, as they may have job roles that don't necessarily change, but certainly in the field of technology and where automation is involved, I think they're feeling the pain.
And Brad, it looks like everybody is finished now.
That's good. That's good. Thanks, Gary. And you know what? Thank you all for answering. And as you can see by the results, the majority of you, like me, yeah, this is something we need to be concerned about and begin thinking about. Thank you for your answers there. Okay, our research that we've been doing tells us employees don't just want to earn money. They want to give meaning to what they do. They yearn for flexibility. They crave autonomy. We've all seen this, and it's especially true, because of the development of digital tools that allow employees to develop these new competencies. And I think what we need to do is place teamwork at the heart of the organization, adapt to our employees' specific needs as much as we can, continuously help them develop their employability, make sure that the work has tangible impact, because that's what the modern worker has come to expect and want. And as much as we are living in an increasingly connected world, Wi-Fi everywhere, we're still challenged with communicating to employees in an effective way. Think about it. With remote employees, staff members on the road, the rise of flexible hours and telecommuting, working in satellite offices, the traditional methods of working have dramatically changed. And to reach today's on-the-move employee, in-office meetings, email blasts, posters really just don't cut it. So today's employees expect timely, relevant, customized communication in easy, digestible pieces. That's for context, and very important when we're looking at learning and just generally the new workforce. A built-in recognition and reward system, I think is very important. And here's why it's important to adapt. 6 in 10 millennials, now the U.S.'s largest generation, say they're looking for new employment opportunities. 6 in 10. They really are on this perpetual search for purpose, and the cost of that turnover is estimated to top a staggering $30 billion a year. And 2/3 of those say they'll leave because they aren't learning enough. But there's good news. The research from Fortune magazine tells us that millennials who say they have a great place to work are 20 times more likely than their peers who don't have a good work experience, and they plan to stay with their company. So that's very encouraging. If they have the right mix, they're going to stay. Now, this is obviously in stark contrast to the popular image of millennials constantly job hunting. But the research tells us that 85% of them, frontline employees, and almost 90% of millennial managers at the best workplaces said they intended to stay with their companies for a long time. And this is really important because for mid-level employees, it costs upwards of 150% of their annual salary to replace them. And since we've had significant changes in the economy and a deep recession creating record levels of unemployment, the percentage of employers reporting talent shortages has fluctuated between 14 and 52% over the past 11 years. Put simply, employees are having a tough time filling positions. So what we're seeing is that the best companies know everything I just told you about, and they recognize that their employees are just as savvy. In studying the best workplaces for millennials, leading employers use different, what they call meaning archetypes, to help employees connect to their work and feel a part of something significant. For example, they might identify as an industry disruptor that inspires innovation, or declare giving back as a key part of their organizational culture. Others honed in on their service-oriented focus, their unwavering team support for employees in times of need, or a reputation as an industry leader offering, the best superior products and expertise. I'm sure you all have heard the term VUCA, V-U-C-A. It's a VUCA world, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And with external volatility, the prevalent characteristics these days, business leaders who stayed focused on their mission and values and have the courage to deploy bold strategies, building on their strengths, they'll be the winners. So the best companies will continue to reinvent themselves. And guess what? Your employees know who they are. So let's talk about some of that. We kind of throw it into three areas, and the first being transformers. The transformers. Let's look at some of the companies that I think can be considered transformers within their industry. Medtronic, they recognize that no one can solve the world's healthcare challenges alone. So their mission statement includes, Medtronic is committed to working in partnership with others so that we can all witness the benefits of a value-based healthcare ecosystem. It's a heck of a mission and purpose. McDonald's needs no introduction. The digital innovations that McDonald's is bringing are really disrupting and transforming fast food burger industry and changing how a fast food restaurant is really perceived. They implemented new features like ordering from digital kiosks, getting food delivered to your table, and the new McDelivery with Uber Eats. This is what McDonald's had to say. These new features are designed to personalize and elevate the experience of customers. The ability to bring speed, scalability, and disruptive innovation across restaurant and digital technologies is reflected in this investment. Finally, from a transformer standpoint, take Honeywell. Now, after a deep portfolio of themselves, Honeywell chose to split into three publicly held companies. The new homes and global distribution business, which will be a leader in home heating, ventilation, and air conditioning and security markets. Another is the new transportation systems business, will be a global leader in turbocharger technologies with best-in-class engineering capabilities for a broad range of engine types. The remaining Honeywell portfolio consists of high-growth businesses and several attractive industrial markets, each aligned to global megatrends. And they include energy efficiency, infrastructure investment, urbanization. These businesses are best positioned to leverage Honeywell synergies from our technologies, and most of all, their talent. So these are the kinds of people transforming. There are three big examples. But then you've heard the expression, innovate or die. So let me share with you some innovators. Salesforce.com. They have literally democratized enterprise software, making the cloud, mobile, social, and now artificial intelligence is available to all companies, regardless of their size. They have a really cool single motto: do it simple, fast, and right, and do it the first time. Very innovative. And another innovator is Unilever. I'm sure you all are aware of Unilever and their many, many products. Innovations at the heart of their ambition to grow substantially. And recognize this is a $100 billion company, so it takes a lot of work to grow. Science, technology, and product development are central to their plans to keep providing their customers with great brands, and kind of using their motto to improve their lives while having a positive impact on the environment and society. More than 6,000 of Unilever's people are R&D professionals, and they're building their brands through just that, R&D innovation. They invest around £1 billion. They're a UK company. They invest around £1 billion in R&D every year. And they hold a portfolio of more than 20,000 patents and patent applications. Finally, Johnson & Johnson is an innovator, and they seek to positively impact human health through innovation. And they do this by helping entrepreneurs realize their dreams of creating healthcare solutions that improve people's lives around the world. And they've got 4 innovation centers around the world. And J&J knows that a great idea can come from anywhere. So they're very much into innovation and making their talent and enabling their talent to do that. Now, finally, let's talk about disruptors. Amazon. Everybody knows Amazon. I don't need to say much about that. But if you invested $100 in Amazon stock when they first did their initial public offering, it'd be worth nearly $64,000 today. And here's a quote: Amazon.com intends to use technology to deliver an outstanding service offering and to achieve the significant economies inherent in the online store model. That's what they said in their initial public offering paperwork. And it seemed novel at the time, but now it's accepted wisdom. Amazon ended up being the preeminent disruptor of all retail. Take PayPal. PayPal not only disrupted the payments industry, its technology and innovation-driven founders shaped the future of the next 18 years of digital payments. And the game is heating up fast for PayPal thanks to the rise of smartphones and the emergence of alternative digital currencies. And they're using smart acquisitions to keep themselves relevant, to the future of payment. And finally, take a look at T-Mobile. This is a cool company. T-Mobile is forcing the other big industry players to offer unlimited data. That's transforming the industry by forcing the other carriers to offer basically unlimited access to mobile data and at a flat monthly rate. And they're beginning to bundle content as part of their offering. So, that I wouldn't say they're the little engine that could, but boy, they came up from behind and they're really putting a dent within their industry. So the best companies all share one thing in common. They continuously reinvent themselves and they invest in talent to do so. So now we have found that putting the right talent and the right roles at the right time is one of the key differentiators between good companies and great companies. Here's what I mean. You'll see on the chart, amplify. Good tools amplify skills by providing leverage and extension. Just as an audio amplifier can make music louder, a music technology can be an amplifier of one's musicianship, enhancing that person's skills and increasing musical intelligence. That's kind of what I mean by amplify. Teams, this is what cultivates a workplace environment of continuous improvements, innovation, initiative. Personalization strategy. Consider what's important to people. We all have different values, needs, motivation. Work takes up a significant part of our day, clearly a third or more, and it has a significant impact on other aspects of our life too, including our sense of self-worth, our sense of well-being. And we expect to consider our values and needs when we plan our career direction and look at developing our career strategy. And the career strategy you put in place at one stage of your life may not be relevant once you've achieved certain goals and experienced other jobs or life events. I know this personally. I've been in the workforce for more than 30 years. And when you look at empower, your goal is to create a work environment where people are empowered, productive, contributing, they're happy. So my advice is don't hinder them by limiting their tools or information. Trust them to do the right thing. And most of all, let them learn from each other. The summary of this slide is that an innovative business model requires that the very best talent be sourced, engaged, developed, and obviously retained. Having a great model is hard enough, but finding outstanding talent to execute on the model is more challenging, and particularly in emerging markets. And that's really where we're talking about the new skills economy. Now, in a skills economy, you've got remote employees, contingent employees. You've got dynamic teams in that they might be geographically dispersed. You have subject matter experts in the midst. But in a skills economy, a burning desire to grow and connect. The classic command and control, the kind of top-down structure simply doesn't work anymore. So I maintain the new way is how people grow. And again, I say don't hem them in with rules and policies that are designed to keep your people coloring inside the lines. Give them the space to color outside the lines and the ability to collaborate. I think we've seen this. When you allow collaboration, the group generates better solutions together than they might otherwise do as individuals. And I'll give you some ideas on how to do that later in the presentation. But we really want to push for a culture of continuous improvement. And that means encouraging people to take action and support. And you want to support them even when they make mistakes. We want to keep learning on the job by actively learning by the mistakes we make. And we are therefore all the time looking for ways to improve processes and improve ourselves, because we've learned that without developing the necessary skills, competencies, and knowledge to do our particular jobs, it's very difficult to comply with our job responsibilities. In the late 90s, and some of you will remember this term with the advent of ERP systems, we were all about automation. And that carries through today, where some companies are so focused on transactions that we overlook the bigger opportunity, the relationship. For years, we put far too much emphasis on the transactions that help us perform compliance or account for the cost. But in the new connected skills economy, the personalized expectations change that approach. Now, here's what I'm saying. In a transaction-focused model that you see on the left, transactions are systems focused, and that creates silos and therefore the need for more transactions. Workflows are entirely compliance focused and basically designed to ensure efficiency as opposed to effectiveness, and that's important. The outcomes are financially motivated. It's to ensure we can account for costs, but decisions are made by gut instinct, not informed context. So I hope you agree it's a flawed model. If we focus on people, the thinking between processes gives us information which we can be used in context, which creates the personal experience that people frankly crave. Classic systems create data, much of which is never used to help the business adapt. So with that, let me ask you a question. Do you agree with the following statement? A people-focused model creates the relationship between teams, leadership, and leadership that in turn creates the employee stickiness we need in our new economy. And what I want to hear, those of you who strongly agree, somewhat agree, maybe you're not quite sure, maybe you somewhat disagree, and some of you may strongly disagree. But again, the question is, do you agree with this? A people-focused model creates the relationship between teams and leadership that, in turn, creates the employee stickiness we need in our new economy. I'll give you a second to answer that.
And Brett, while they are answering, I'll tell you that Sarah says you sound like an advocate for servant leadership.
Indeed, I am. Thank you for that, Sarah. It's funny you say that. Yep. Looks like we've mostly got in. And you know what? This doesn't surprise me. I think we all in the modern workplace see that it's really the stickiness we need in our workforce between teams and leadership. They need to be very much aligned, and clearly the majority of you agree with that statement. Thank you for answering that, everybody. Oh, okay. So clearly everybody, I think, seems to agree. And if we all agree that skills are the new currency and we want to overcome the skills gap in our workforce, I think we need to give the right tools, right? And that includes people, teams and leadership, process, technology, all of this working together. And similar to what I told you about Sir Ken Robinson's position on traditional learning, it used to be you'd basically learn through young adulthood and then you'd work. And now it's simply not enough to just learn through your 20s and stop and just quit. We're beyond that. Learning and working are now really forever merged. So this is what myself, my colleagues, we've been thinking about. And what I want to do is give you benefit of now is that how we think, what we think will be the greatest impact for you as you think about how to begin a structure or a strategy for the future. So I'm going to give you 4 strategies. The first strategy, which is create lifelong learning experiences. And when you think about this and how you would want to incorporate these learning approaches in your shop, in your organization, keep learner experiences in mind. First is learning management and how you'd make that a better learning experience. Now, in addition to making it, a modern user interface, because learners simply gravitate to that, and we call that the Netflix experience. It's important to enable custom tailoring by the individual, not just the admin's view, not just their view of the world. Now, this would include enabling your learners to self-curate content, be able to create their own playlists. Only then can you enable the learner to be accountable for their learning. That's an important term, accountable for their learning, which is one of the thresholds learners cross when they actually progress through the 4 stages of self-directed learning. And once a learner becomes that 3rd stage, what's called the involved learner, they've now taken full accountability for their learning. And that's good because that's similar to what they're doing with their job right now. This actually becomes a neurological connection of habits and rules once you get to this place. Just like when we learn how to look both ways before crossing the street, creating approaches that promote learner autonomy will create this lifelong learning habit, this neurological habit, which really results in better job performance because, frankly, if you do that, you're more engaged. And you need to allow this individual to be the ability to create their learning environment so that they can continue along their autonomous role in their job. Next, we found that enabling learner collaboration is essential in today's world of work. And therefore, lifelong learning is important because the collaboration is important because we can now capitalize on the 90% of learning that takes place beyond the traditional LMS. Hopefully all of you are familiar with the 70-20-10 model. And if you haven't heard about it, I encourage you to read about it. Now that we can virtually connect across business units, different countries, geographies, we also have the ability to track these informal learning events, this 90% of how we learn. And since informal learning is basically free of that command and control I just talked about, learners are free to communicate with one another, and it's spontaneous. It's in an unstructured way. And our growing workforce demographic is used to this. And now, in a constantly changing skills environment, it really becomes essential. So this kind of one-to-one or one-to-many interaction really allows us to learn by having an environment free of Big Brother, if you will, watching. And it really spawns innovation. So I encourage my customers to always seek to build or find content that inspires learning by creating multimodal courses, meaning many devices that are capable on many devices that are interactive and short in length. Yeah, micro-learning comes to mind. But that doesn't mean to reduce required learning, but to build in stages where people can actually learn in the flow of work, which I maintain that's what happens today. And then finally, technology allows us to make predictions by leveraging big data. Now, something we couldn't do really until recently. The combination of properly leveraging big data and machine learning allows learners that autonomy and information they need to be, that they really need to be ready at the intersection of the coming new skills. And it allows administrators to predict trends, make adjustments. Big data as a term, it can be confusing. So let me give you an analogy. The star ratings in Amazon, many of you may recall, Amazon really started in the business of selling books. That's where they first, actually launched their business. And they had the star ratings. And certainly when they sold that one book and that first reader came in and gave a comment about it and a star rating, it intrinsically improved the value of Amazon.com, the site itself, that particular book itself. And albeit you had one reviewer said, this book is great, what really provided the strength and the intrinsic value is when you had 1,000 people review that same book. And now you could take that as big data and actually put credibility just in terms of the sample size. So that's really what I'm talking about with big data, and it really assists us with machine learning. So all that being said, strategy number 1, create lifelong experiences. Let's move on to strategy number 2. All right, strategy number 2, make recruiting a competitive advantage. Now, similar to creating lifelong learning experiences, doing the right things with recruiting is really key in the new skills economy. It should go beyond simply organizing resumes, scheduling interviews. It must have key features to really attract the best talent that you can. And it'll become harder and harder to attract the best because in the next few years, fewer and fewer people, this is interesting, fewer and fewer people will actually work as employees in corporations. And I just saw this this was research conducted by Upwork Press. They predict that more than half the U.S. workforce will be freelance workers by the year 2027. Think about that. That's a lot of independent people. And it speaks to the new specialty of skills and the tendency, or what I predict will be deep specialization, deep expertise in particular skills. So it's kind of interesting to think about that 2027 might bring half the workforce are waving their own flag. So having said that, your recruiting strategy needs to include strong brand strategy because that's what people are looking at. You may be the best organization in the world at what you do, but recruiting is really your front door to job candidates. So branding is very important. You'll also want to consider how to go about campus and event recruiting. This too is kind of a buyer's market, but this is where you go to get candidates in some cases, and it requires a different approach than what you would normally take in filling jobs. Pre-employment assessments are also very important to screen out candidates who may lack experience in a job role, and also with more and more candidates out there, it's a way to make more efficient your recruiting processes. And as much as possible, these should be automated and easy to use, because candidates will gravitate to those companies that make the application process simple. And that's where they're going to go to first. If it's hard to apply, you're going to go to the bottom of the list. Finally, onboarding is essential. Now that you have the right people, and you need to give them the tools. You need to give them the knowledge share for them to be up and running as soon as they can. At the same time, you want to use onboarding as an opportunity, really, to show off your great company culture, your company values. And according to a study done by Aberdeen Group, and this is why it's important, more than 30% of employees make a decision to leave within the first 6 months of being hired. So onboarding is like really crucial if you want to retain your candidates in investment. And incorporating social learning tools to the process, I think it'll soon make or break you in terms of holding on to your hires. It's also that key activity that results in shorter time to employee productivity. So clearly it's important. Now, third strategy, now in order to keep your talent happy and staying put, is talent management processes. They need to be personalized. A major part of that is enabling your people to be autonomous learners. But it also follows that workers need to feel they're contributing and useful to the organization. There's a guy named Daniel Pink, who's a well-known author and journalist. He wrote a book called Drive, The Surprising Truth About What Motivates Us. And in that book, he really cites and gives credit to a couple of behavioral psychologists back from the 60s, Edward Deci and Richard Ryan. And they did extensive research on self-determination theory, psychological needs, basically what drives us. And Pink did a great job of putting their work in layman's terms by telling us that people are driven by autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So by creating tools that allow for proper alignment of performance against goals of the organization, not just at the job role level, but at the individual level. When people feel like they're contributing, are truly an asset to the organization, you not only get to keep them because they want to stay, they help improve the overall success of the organization. I'm sure you all agree with that. So things like succession planning enable your stars to shine. Now, we all know that everybody's wired differently. Some are very ambitious, seek to go to higher roles in the organization. Some don't. And I'll suggest to you that, at least through the research I've done, the 2020s will be the decade of experts. People will really dig into their specialties, especially when the workforce will largely be comprised of freelance workers, like I just pointed out. And with that in mind, your strategy needs to include a strong and transparent way for workers to plan their career. And we found that when organizations have the ability to automate their performance, their succession, their compensation activities, they really enjoy a stronger employee engagement. Which in my experience is the key to succeeding as a business, the key to profitability. So that folks, is strategy number 3, personalize talent management processes. So the fourth strategy is bringing context and data to making HR decisions. I've been in both HR and business operations sides of the business for many years, and frankly, up until the last 5 years or so, I think things like workforce planning, project contingency plans, business success measures, they've really all been entirely in the domain of the operational side of the business, not HR. But a lot of that, I think, has shifted. More and more, I see the successful businesses really leveraging HR. Why? Because HR plays an essential role, certainly in attracting and retaining the talent of this new skills economy. It's getting the attention of senior leadership. And if we all agree that we're on a journey where skills and data really kind of represent the new currency, the fuel of the future, HR needs to have a prominent place at the leadership table. But HR has to understand where the organization is going. And I'm talking about business-wise in order for them to truly help. Things like workforce planning need to move from project people using Excel spreadsheets, figuring that out to using automated tools that tackle organization-wide challenges and making sure you have the right people in the right place. You need to have an organization. You need to have organizational, management tools that allow management to make logical decisions based on data that allow for things like succession, but also ready contingency plans when it comes to enabling the workforce. Tools that can solve problems like, my PM, my program manager for the new champion project, unfortunately, was in a car accident. He's not going to be able to return to work for 6 weeks. Who do we have that we can put in his role right now? Who do we backfill for the void that this just created? One of the most important realizations that we've come to is that we need to make more precise predictions when it comes to talent, using that as an example. We need to know statistical probabilities of, for example, how long will it be when we need a certain skill set. Let's say we're going to convert a manual assembly line of construction widgets to a fully automated line in 2021. What skills will be needed? Ask ourselves historically, what is our time frame for employees to achieve full productivity in the role? What's our transition plan to either upskill or maybe hire new talent to fill the roles? What's our average time to hire? You need to be able to sift through the data to provide good business intelligence, to provide, answers that are quantifiable. And you need the right tools to do this well. So let me ask you another question. Of the four strategies I just talked about, which one of them is the most important to you and your organization? Create lifelong learning experiences, make recruiting a competitive advantage, personalize talent management processes, or bring context and intelligence to HR decisions. Interesting, Gary, how the results are coming in.
It is. Is this different than what you typically see, or is this kind of in line with what you normally find?
Now, this is actually in line. That being, I'm seeing the majority are really, as a call to action, see that creating lifelong learning experience is important. And I find that not only the research, but customers tell us that, and these audiences tell us that, learning is kind of at the center of the talent management wheel. Without it, you can't really do well at anything. So I'm pleased to see that folks agree with me that creating lifelong learning experiences of the four very important strategies is probably the most important to the organization. Clearly the majority. And thank you all for answering that. So at the risk of sounding like a Cornerstone commercial, which genuinely, folks, I really try hard not to do. But one of the things we're very proud at Cornerstone is that we built these tools, and we've leveraged real world expertise to do it. And as more and more customers are embracing what I've been saying, particularly of HR playing a more prominent role in business operations, we're seeing greater demand for a product. So based on what our research tells us, that the world of work is rapidly changing and skills and data are the new currency and fuel of the future, our going in position with our clients is, what does the future hold for you and your organization? and basically how will you future proof your business, your people, and your success. So tell you what, Gary, before we continue, um, I'm happy to take any questions that folks may have.
Okay, great. Well, we do have some, and we've been holding. People have been very patient here. Um, so, Carissa wanted to know what you think. If you have any sense of this in healthcare, what are the biggest disruptions there? Have you seen any particularly in healthcare that you'd call out?
Yeah, great question. And healthcare has kind of a unique, well, not, yeah, I would call it a unique situation, particularly when you're talking about nurses and people on shift and talking about working in the flow of work. There's little time to just break away. But I do see that, one of the positive technology disruptions, and forgive me if I can't remember the particular brand of software, but what nurses and doctors use on their tablets, and what we're beginning to see is that oftentimes that can be difficult when they're filling out forms or interpreting data. I see a greater level of field sensitive help and field sensitive training. And when I say field sensitive, is you get to a place on the tablet on a form and go, oh, I don't know what that means. And the ability to, rather than drop off and then go to some e-learning course or some learning module, the ability on screen to tap into it and get some really immediate feedback and help. I think that's a disruptive technology, frankly, in a positive way. Great question. Thank you.
Great. And then somebody, I didn't capture their name, asked, how is the new skills economy different from the gig economy? They weren't familiar with the gig economy.
Well, I think largely it's the same, and we're talking about. I think when we talk about the new skills economy, it's really more directed toward workers, whereas when we speak of the new gig economy, I think we're talking just general technology advances. I've heard the two used synonymously, though. I don't know if I've done a good job of answering your question, but that's my take on
I guess we can always Google it for more, right?
it. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned Dan Pink and his contention that people crave autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Can you expand on or provide context for these three items that three terms that he uses?
Yeah, happy to, and thanks. It's one of those things where you're giving a talk, you wish you had more time to just dig deeper. But what Pink said is giving people sovereign autonomy is about giving people the sovereignty over what they do, when they do it, how they do it, where they do it, and who they do it with. And he basically agrees with these two guys that that's what really creates the secret sauce of workforce engagement. So when we say people are engaged and have autonomy, we're talking about the ability to deal with the task at hand, to do it on their time, the liberty and freedom to get their work done how they see fit, and also be a part of a team. That's the first miracle of engagement that drives impact is autonomy. Now, he describes mastery as a mindset. It requires the discovery or awareness of an area of deep interest. So mastery is a pain. It's something that's not easy. And when I talk about mastery, it takes commitment and purpose to pursue mastery. And it doesn't have an end. It's one of those things that you keep plugging away at, which leads to his third term, purpose. Everybody needs to feel that they are doing something that has a purpose. And again, this is a social science that transcends just learning. But I think it's very applicable. So when you put the three together, autonomy, mastery, and purpose, his position is this is the fuel of motivation, and motivation fuels performance, and performance drives impact and engagement. Great question.
It is a great question. Thanks a lot for the great answer. Let's see, who just put this in? Deborah Dana just entered this, and I wanted to catch it here before we run out of time. And then maybe I can get to AA Midwest question too. Deborah Dana says, speaking of the new skills economy, how will market pricing for jobs be done given the deconstruction and reconstruction of jobs as jobs are dissected into what automation and AI can do versus what needs to be done with a human?
It's a great point. So much of our approach to market pricing for individual job roles is really very mechanical. And it's got an eyeball out to what's everybody else doing? And it's not an easy task to do. Now, if these jobs are going to be changing at a frequency that's tough to keep up with, well, certainly automation comes into mind. I think AI, big data will play a role in that, because the very purpose behind it is to try and make predictions of what's to come. So I think if you have a lot of data and you have a job family made up of particular roles that are rapidly changing, not being a data scientist, I wouldn't pretend to tell you how this is done, but I've got faith and confidence that it's through big data and artificial intelligence, the ability to predict, that'll allow us to keep pace with changing market pricing. Great question.
That is a great question. Yep. We've got about 2 minutes left here, and maybe it's a good time to just see if you want to. Do you have any final thoughts that you want to close with?
No, other than the leave behinds. Let me find my mouse here. Let's see what we got our next. Yeah, I mean, I think you told the folks up front. Encourage people to, if you want to learn more about this stuff, visit cornerstoneondemand.com or email info@Cornerstone On Demand. And I think you've got some leave behinds for us, Gary.
We do, you bet. Right down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a handouts pod down there, so you can see Surviving the New Skills Economy. Those are the slides that Brett has shared with you today. That's not the white paper, though. So in addition to that, there's a white paper right here where I'm pointing on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you click that link, then you can download that white paper. I'm sure you'll appreciate it. Also, I noted that the link to that TED Talk that Brett had mentioned. And then if you'd like some more information about the Masters Series webinar that's coming up, you can click this link right here and find out who are the 8 presenters and all about the big full day event on April 20th. So thank you very much, Brett, for for really an excellent webinar, full of jam-packed, full of excellent insights, maybe that we haven't thought of in quite a long time, if at all. Janice says it was fantastic, as you can see there, and I would tend to agree. I invite everybody else to go ahead and put your thoughts in there as well. Casey, you asked, could we repeat the gentleman's name? I missed it when you put it in. I think he was talking about Dan Pink at the time, and you can see Jen has put it in there.
Oh, great. Yeah, Daniel Pink.
Yep. And he likes to be called Daniel, yeah.
Gary, I want to thank you and Training Magazine and certainly everybody who joined the call. While I have the opportunity to say thanks. Go on.
Well, thanks so much. I enjoyed working with you. As you and I both know, it was a fun experience. So hopefully we can do it again sometime pretty soon. I know Cornerstone is going to be sponsoring some more webinars in Training Magazine Network coming up, and we'll make sure everybody knows about that. And I hope that you are a part of that as well, Brett.
Thank you. I hope so, too. I look forward to it, Gary.
All righty, well, take care. Oh, Gene asks, I'm interested in the Master Series webinar. Is there a cost? So if you are a standard, premium, or advanced member, then there is no cost. And if you are a basic member, which maybe many of you are, then that's a good time to just upgrade your membership so that you can attend that event and also end up getting a pass to the training conference, the annual training conference in Orlando next year, or else the online learning conference coming up in the bargain, because those will come along with certain upgrades, and you can I think there's a link there you can click about that. Sorry to slip that in on at the end of the webinar. Didn't mean to be a commercial, but thanks, Jen, for asking. Gene.